Behold, a miracle of technology. Without the modern Boxer primer, the shooting sports we enjoy would not exist. Convenient, clean burning, and non-toxic when handled properly, of course. They incorporate a few simple chemicals which by themselves are harmless, but when combined, ignite at the will of its wielder. Stick around as we discuss and demonstrate this most important of hand-loading components.
You'll see that little pin. You can drive that.
Oh, and by the way, you don't want to dry fire these things.
Just a little bit to the side of the...
2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All in 25, 25 and a half, 26 grains. Around 1866, an American inventor by the name of Hiram Berdan of New York invented a variation of the Berdan primer. It was similar to the caps used in the cap lock system. A small metal cup with pressure-sensitive material inside. Modern Berdan primers are pressed into the, quote, primer pocket of a Berdan-type cartridge case. Inside the primer pocket is a small bump, the anvil that rests against the center of the cup, and 2 small holes, one on either side of the anvil, that allows flash from the primer to reach the interior of the case, igniting the inside powder. Berdan cases are reusable, although reloading them is very tedious. Removing the spent primer involves using a hydraulic press or a pincher type decapper, which is inefficient, especially if you're loading a couple of thousand rounds for a match. Coincidentally, at the same time, really? You guys really believe in coincidences? Across the ocean in England, a Colonel Edward Boxer was working on a primer cap design for cartridges. His U.S. patent was awarded to him sometime in June of 1869. Boxer primers are similar to Berdan primers, with one major difference: the location of the anvil. In a Boxer primer, the anvil is a separate stirrup piece that sits inverted in the primer cup, providing sufficient resistance to the impact of the firing pin as it indents the cup and crushes the pressure-sensitive ignition compound. The primer pocket in the case head makes a single flash hole in its center. Me personally, I really think there's no difference in performance due on testing that we've done, but it makes fired primers easier to remove for reloading. Ironically, Boxer primed cases became popular in the US, while Berdan cases are usually the normal in Europe. European and Eastern military ammunition often use a corrosive or slightly corrosive Berdan primers because they work reliably under severe conditions. They also have a longer shelf life than non-corrosive type primers in current use. For those of you who love your Milsurp guns, all that Milsurp ammo, it's corrosive. Meanwhile, modern Boxer primers are almost always non-corrosive and non-mercuric. As always, your results may vary, and precautions should be taken when firing any old military ammo as to whether it's corrosive or not in your gun. When in doubt, clean it out. You guys know we are big fans of this type of ammo. It was cheap, and highly available. Primer manufacture is the most dangerous part of small arms component production. Sensitive priming compounds have killed and maimed many, including the founder of the British Eley ammunition firm. Early primers used the same mercury fulminate used in the 19th century percussion caps. Again, building on the shoulders of giants. Black powder could be effectively ignited by hot mercury. Mercuric primers did not work so well with smokeless powder loadings. Mercury fulminate slowly decomposed in storage until the remaining energy was insufficient for reliable ignition. Decreased ignition energy with age has not been recognized as a problem with black powder loadings because black powder is much easier to ignite. Priming mixtures containing mercury fulminate leave metallic mercury in the bore and empty cartridge cases after firing. When used with black powder, the mercury was largely absorbed in the smoky residue. Mercury coated the interior of brass cases with smokeless powder loads, and the higher pressures of smokeless powder charges literally infused the mercury with the brass, where it formed zinc and copper amalgams, weakening the cases so it became unsuitable for reloading. Corrosive primers can cause serious damage to the gun's barrel in action, usually in the form of rust if not cleaned right after following. Usually, a lot of the Milsurp cleaners like to carry a little Windex bottle because the ammonia neutralizes the salts. Civilian ammunition manufacturers began offering non-corrosive primers in the 1920s, but most military ammunition continued to use corrosive priming mixtures of established reliability. Some of the other chemicals used include lead azide, potassium perchlorate, or diazonitreniphenol, DDNP, a topic of which warrant their own video and go beyond the scope of this discussion. Which brings us to the topic at hand. Various primer manufacturers have a proprietary formula for each type of primer produced with advantages for each. Specific primer types use specific amounts and mixtures of compound chemicals in their recipe. Care needs to be taken when loading ammunition calling for a specific brand and type of primer, especially when dealing with loads developed and published in manuals. Substituting types may seem harmless, but may run the risk of ruining your firearm or your body in the long term. Brisance is the shattering effect of an explosive. By adding fuels and oxidizers to the recipe, it increases heat generation without increasing brisance. How primers work. When the firing pin drops, the kinetic energy transferred to the primer pushes the anvil against the primer cup, generating heat. And the best example I could give is to take your hands and kind of smash them together and rub them, and you'll feel the heat generated in your hand. Well, that microscopic amount of heat shock is transferred to the priming compound in the primer. Oh, and don't forget, primers are actually activated, so to speak, when we seat them. We actually set the anvil, which is why proper primer seating techniques are so important. If you've ever been at the range and you see a guy with hand loads that just won't ignite the first time, but will ignite the second time, well, that just shows that he didn't seat his primers all the way. The first ignition primer shot is seating the primer, while the second ignition is actually igniting the primer. Now, there is no industry test which measures primer power or brisance. We initiated a few tests on our own, which demonstrated the force contained in various primers. You see what we got here going on? Like we said back at the desktop, we've got our large pistol primers ready to go. Federal, CCI, Remington, Winchester, and some Wolves. Some of the more common ones that you're going to find out there. We've excluded the RWS just because they're a little bit harder to find, and we're going to stick to boxer primed cases. No Berdan stuff here today. So we're also going to test out 3 very popular small pistol primers: Winchester, Wolf, and Remington. And again, what we've done here is we've primed our cases. They're loaded with a standard, this is 158 grain hollow base wad cutter bullet that we're using, soft lead, and you can see the mark: Remingtons, Wolf, and Winchester. So we're gonna shoot these without powder, and we're gonna measure how far in the bore they go, just to measure power strength. Same thing here with our large pistol. And for our large pistol today, we're going to be shooting them out of our Ruger. And for the 38 Special, we've got the Ruger Blackhawk, an older model with custom grips, beautiful Spalton maple custom grips. This is a 6.5 inch barrel, and the stainless Lipsies is 5.5 inch. So here's the plan. We're going to fire these rounds through each gun, and we're going to measure how far the primer went. We've got a handy dandy measuring tape here. This might get a little tedious, so we're going to shoot, measure, pound out, and I'm going to shoot. I loaded up 3 of each. We'll try it out here. Travel, average of 3 shots each, with Wolf, Winchester, and Remington. And that is how far into the barrel they traveled. Wolf being the strongest, Remington being the weakest. Now onto the large pistol primers. You can see there our round nose flat point, our average travel of Winchester, Remington, CCI, and Wolf. Interestingly enough, look at the Federal match below. 1/4 of an inch. That's the one that bound up the revolver. The bullet never even exited the cylinder. Just like we were talking about. A lighter charge upsets the bullet less, allowing the full charge of powder to burn evenly. Here, next, we've got a chart of primer cup hardness from softest to hardest. Federal number 1 as the softest, and Tula/Wolf as number 5. Good luck trying to find Tula with the Obama garbage that they put in, banning imports. Another reason for listing primer cup by hardness is depending on what you're loading for, you might want a harder or softer cup. Cowboy action, older hammer mounted firing pins, so on and so forth, IDPA, your results vary. Interestingly enough, the match primer barely pushed the round past the cylinder throat. This reaffirms the theory that the lighter charge upsets the bullet gun the least among first firing. The light primer charge minimized the blast effect before the main powder charge can take over. With a regular primer, the blast can push the bullet into the bore before the powder ignites, ruining accuracy. In this case, a milder primer can generate greater pressure. Seems counterintuitive. Think of it this way. Greater space capacity in the case means lower overall pressures. Hotter primers push the bullet out of the case prematurely, creating more space in the case, therefore less pressure. Milder primers ensure the round stays secure in the case neck, generating the proper pressures. And of course, all this happens very, very rapidly. This explains why bench rest shooters often seem to prefer brass with smaller fash holes. It's like putting your finger over a garden hose. It forces the blast into a concentrated stream, which ignites powders much more evenly. But this is just one school of thought. Next up, we wanted to capture primer intensity. We chose to use our short-barreled revolver shot in the dark to capture the image of primers igniting, and have placed a 24-inch measuring stick to get a feel for the distance. We shot 3 each and posted up the ones that were most visible. Results were very interesting to say the least. As you can see, the small pistol Remington ended up giving us the longest flame, while the small pistol Winchester seemed the most conservative. Remington large pistols seemed to be the longest flame again, while Winchester was the brightest and Wolf the smallest. Surprisingly, the large pistol Federal match demonstrated more flame than I would have thought, being that it only pushed the bullet a mere 1/4 inch out. We hope our discussion and findings have got you thinking in a new way about primers. As always, if you don't feel comfortable with your abilities, seek out someone who does. That is, after all, what this sport is all about, spending time with friends and family. As a final note, please be aware that nationalist, pro-gun groups are under increasing censorship. Our collective voice is being muted. If you found any of this or any of our other videos helpful, the best thing to do is copy our links and send them to like-minded patriots. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support. Comments, questions, and suggestions, of course, can be left below. Until next time.
Right now, more than ever, constitutionalists, patriots, libertarians, pro-gun channels are under attack by media everywhere. If you guys like this channel, if you guys like the videos, send the links out. We are being blocked. you're gonna have to send the links out. Copy the links, paste them, email them to like-minded individuals, patriots, people of all sorts, Americans who like to shoot. They are coming for us hard and heavy. They're censoring our channel, they're throttling our channel. Everything is way, way down. They are not playing around. So, continue to fight. Till next time.